did you see changes in customer satisfaction in the scoring or in anecdotal things? And maybe a broader question than that to add to that is what did you see from the customer side that told you that this was working?
Well, I think the key things, so if we're talking about results and just working, I think the key thing that we saw was the customer behavior and body language at meetings. The distrust was gone. The customer felt respected. The levels of urgency were matching the same needs that they had. There was no more disconnection between the sites. And now this didn't happen magically at every site, all at the same time. Each site took its own learning curve or learning time to grow. And the willingness of the customer was key. But the real indicator was not the surveys. It was too late for the surveys. The real indicators were two things. One was the case studies from the people that were at the sites and how they actually perceived these tools to work. And the other part was the interfacing with the customer face-to-face and being able to really see the difference in their body language when you were meeting with them.
Yeah, it's just a word about that. One of the unique things about this program was the way that we measure results. And the kinds of results that you get really are about, a lot of them about behavior change. Now, you've mentioned a lot of the hard results in terms of reductions in inventory or process results like reductions in escalations, and those are impressive. But what we did in the program is we collected a case study. When somebody had completed the entire program, the very last thing that they did was to give us a one-page description of a challenge, a very specific challenge where they applied the TCF tools, what they did, and the results that they got. And I'll show you those in a minute, but to Tony's point, the important thing is we had literally more than 100 cases where people came back to us and said, here's how the customer was behaving, and here's how we were behaving. All the things that Tony mentioned, the lack of trust, the difficulty in meetings, and then they would go on to say, here are the tools that I applied from Total Customer Focus, and here's the change in behavior. Now, it's not an ROI, it's a soft measure, but when you get that many testimonials and case studies around a soft measure, that you of course have to believe that you're definitely seeing that shift in the culture. So I think that was a great way to look at it, and the results have been very impressive. We'll show you some more in just a minute, but I wanted to see what other kinds of questions people had. One of the ones, Tony, that's come up, and I know this comes up quite a bit, is that you've been talking about a very specific environment where you have field service engineers that are working on equipment. A lot of the people that we talked to today about Total Customer Focus are on the software and the IT side. And so the question always comes up that in a different environment, if you're applying Total Customer Focus, for example, if your people are on customer call desks or technical support lines, that sort of interface, what do you think would be different, and what would be the same about Total Customer Focus for them?
Well, for me to answer that is probably not necessarily the right way to answer it. I think people would have to ask themselves some very specific questions. You know, are there people really asking the customers the types of questions that get to the customer's real issues right out of the gate? Do they really understand how to understand the customer's problems? Or do they just take an error code or whatever the customer says and just go down the troubleshooting tree? Is there a reason why you want to improve their capability? Are they focused only on the technical problems? Do your people have the soft skills they need to build partner-type relationships with customers? Do they get panicked when the customer starts yelling at them? Do they give in to the customer's demands too quickly? You know, rather than trying to get a balanced outcome. I mean, this is, any company that's in the service business would want a balanced outcome. I'm not quite sure what a balanced outcome looks like in the software side of the business or the networking side of the business. You would have to ask yourselves that. These problems, they exist in any service organization. How you tailor this to deliver different results for you means you really have to get involved to uncover what it is that you're trying to accomplish. The tools will work. What you need to work with is really defining what it is that you want to change. And once you do that, TCF is just a method to make the change. But it's up to you to really decide what you're trying to address. I feel anybody that deals with a customer can always get better in the self-confidence realm, can always get better at asking questions, can always get better at managing a customer when they're irate, and make the company look much better and much more professional. So I think that all of these tools help to do that.
Okay. The in a related question, somebody asked us about how do you justify the training expenditure. You know, as you describe this, obviously this requires investment coming from ASML. Did you have any way that you could measure the return? Did you have anything that you could point to or calculate that said this was generating a positive return on investment? How did you deal with that?
Yeah, so, you know, the numbers game is an interesting one. We were faced with a couple of things. One is we knew we needed to change. The other one was that we were piling up service costs from panic-based decisions. And these costs were driving our capability of being profitable as a service organization out the window. We did not relate it dollar to dollar. We knew we needed to change. We needed to prepare our people better for the future. So we decided that we were going to become a learning organization and we were going to invest in the development of our people. I do know that the results of this effort is very favorable in comparison to what we were spending to manage incidental issues with the customers in the past versus what we're doing now.
So you could point to savings and improvements and essentially cost and resource efficiency and effectiveness that more than offset the investment in the whole program. Is what I'm
Absolutely.
Okay.
And it continues to do that because people get better at it as time goes on.
Okay, a couple more questions. This one is interesting. It's about the globalization from it. So, you know, as you've said, this program was rolled out on a global basis. So, what kind of a role did you think that the language and the cultural barriers played, and how did you overcome them? How did we overcome them?
Yeah, so definitely differences in cultural barriers. Everybody that works in a globalized industry knows that. What you have to find is you have to find some champions in each culture, and you have to find people that can influence those cultures, because the same person in the U.S. may not be able to influence the same type of result in Japan. So you have to find local champions. The workshops provided us areas to do that because we were able to assess the people. You know, when we did the pilot programs, we picked some of our best performing people to really pilot this process. And out of those, we picked some people that became actual facilitators and actual train-the-trainer type people. They were responsible for shifting their cultures and breaking down any walls and barriers that existed from a culture-related aspect. It was challenging, but the message was there. The right people were in the right spot. I wouldn't say that, you know, everything was 100% successful because that would be false. But what we did learn is having the people that speak the language and in the culture, having them convinced that this is the right change to do, goes a long way in convincing the people that don't want to give it time. So once we got the first 33% of our group, you know, some of the pilot people really ingrained, then we started to see more changes going forward. But it's really that first 33% that we have to shift. Then the next 33% become much easier, and then the last 33% of the people that may or may not change anyway. But if you can get 60-something% changed, you can definitely change your culture.
Yeah, yeah. It's you know, for those of us, let me just add to that, the finding people in, as you said, in each country not only helped to overcome the language and the cultural barriers, but they really did become leaders, you know, for everybody else. And so those people themselves became embedded in the local office in Korea or Japan or California, and really could support everybody else. So it just grew and grew and grew from there. And the other thing that's interesting is the concepts are really universal. I mean, even in some Asian countries,